Hello guys, welcome back. My name is Nathan, and today we need to talk about a recent report from Jeff Marek of Sportsnet talking about Jakob Chychrun potentially going to the Buffalo Sabres in a trade. Now there's a lot of details coming out now and a lot of speculation, but what are the latest trade rumors surrounding Chychrun? Could a trade to Buffalo actually happen? Well, we're going to break down all the trade rumors and all the news, so make sure to hit that subscribe button if you are new. 50% of you guys aren't subscribed, and if you like hockey content, this channel is the place to be. Now, Jeff Marek recently was talking about the Jakob Chychrun situation and potentially Buffalo as a fit, but before I show that clip, let's first talk about Chychrun for a second here because his situation this season has actually been pretty wild. He, of course, had a wrist injury, and that kept him out for the start of the season, but he's been brought back in the last week and a half and has played 3 games, getting 1 goal, 2 assists for 3 points, a point per game, got a big game-tying goal against Detroit to send that game into overtime, and so far has looked pretty good. Maybe not amazing yet, but he's still progressing and obviously at a point per game rate with the Coyotes. That's nothing to scoff at. And I feel like if Chychrun is still able to play more, if he's able to get even more back and used to the NHL level, I feel like with Chychrun, he could be a player that gets that value back immediately and teams trust what he has to offer. But we'll get more to that in a second. First, let me show you what Jeff Marek had to say about the Chychrun situation.
We have 3 points here, Jeff.
Yeah, there's a couple here. So Kevin Bieksa always loves it when we do Jakob Chychrun updates. So Kev, this one is for you. He's back and he's healthy. He's playing again. Looked really good last night against the Detroit Red Wings. And so we're going to fire up the trade talk and you'll hear the likely candidates. We'll hear plenty about the Islanders and we'll hear about the Kings and we'll hear about the Columbus Blue Jackets. And we're starting to wonder as well about maybe a dark horse candidate in the Buffalo Sabres. Now, Kevin Adams, the general manager, has always maintained we're sticking with youth and that's the way that we're going. But there is a feeling out there that, you know, they run those big 3 young defensemen really hard. Matthias Samuelsson, Owen Power, and Rasmus Dahlin, who's having a fantastic campaign. You know, this is a team that doesn't need any more prospects. They've identified their core. They've locked them up long term. They need to start to put together their team. Jakob Chychrun has this season and the next 2 seasons at 4.6, and Ron and Elliotte were starting to wonder.
So basically what Marek was mentioning here is that although there are still a lot of teams in on Chychrun, the Sabres might be one of the more interesting dark horse candidates, and there's already been interest there as well. Of course, they got the young group of defensemen there. Maybe there could be something involving a trade, and the Sabres could be going out and getting Chychrun to add to that defense. Let's take a look at the fit, what Chychrun could provide for Buffalo, and what that trade could potentially look like. And of course, it all starts with the contract for Chychrun, who makes $4.6 million for this year and the next 2 years after. Definitely one of the best deals in the NHL when he is healthy, but of course, that has been a little bit in question. At age 24, last year in 47 games, he got 21 points, which was a big drop-off after 2021. But if you guys were going back to my analysis back then, you would know that I saw Chychrun as a top 15 defenseman back in 2021, if not better just in that year by itself. You see, he got 41 points in 56 games, 18 goals, but he was truly dominant for the Coyotes, not just in terms of the goal scoring, but the way he was able to get himself in position, the way, especially defensively, he was able to go off foes and be able to defend the rush so well. He was becoming one of the better overall defensemen in the entire league, and he was already building up his defensive acumen heading into that year. But that 41-point campaign was truly, I thought, the breakout year and the start of much more to come. But of course, we saw in 2022 how that production dropped off, and this year, of course, he was injured for the start, but has gotten back a little bit to that offensive form. So let's say the Coyotes are 15 games into Chychrun's season, he's floating around a point per game, is still at that same defensive level that we know and love. To me, I think the value is still going to be sky high, and we've seen with the Coyotes, especially this offseason, how they didn't pull the trigger because it didn't feel like the value was there yet. But I have a feeling that come especially trade deadline time, teams will be coughing up a lot of assets for him. Now, in the Buffalo Sabres case, it is pretty interesting because I think that term means more to them than some other teams like the LA Kings, for example. Having this year and in the next 2 locked up at 4.6 is not just huge for their cap situation, even though they do have a lot of cap space right now, but you want to have that cap space for the future, as well as just having him locked up. I mean, even though I think he would re-sign in Buffalo, especially by the time his contract is over, I think Buffalo is going to be a fantastic team in the NHL, and they're already kind of trending in that direction. I feel like Chychrun having that long-term projectability is key because for the Sabres, it likely won't be used as just a rental. The Sabres, I don't think, are going to be pushing for the playoffs this year. year they absolutely do not need to. And you have this year, you have 2 years on top of that afterwards, and I think that makes it a lot easier for the Sabres to go after him, trade a bunch of big assets for him, because it is going to take a lot. But for Buffalo, they don't really need that many more prospects. They got a ton on the roster, and in the offseason, I rank them as the best prospect pool in the NHL. They are absolutely stacked, but they want to be making that progress towards something greater, and Chychrun, if healthy, would do so much for them. Now, you look at the Sabres defense groups right now, and if they don't trade anybody on this defense, which we'll see if that actually ends up happening, but let's say they trade no defensive chips on the NHL roster right now. If you put in Jakob Chychrun, that would make this entire lineup just even more dirty, in my opinion. Now, it depends on whether the Sabres are going to be continuing to stick Samuelsson with Dahlin. So far, that pair has worked out in a great way, but you could have potential of putting maybe Chychrun with Dahlin, maybe having Owen Power, of course, with Yoki Haru still, and maybe having Samuelsson on that bottom pair with Lyubushkin. I'm not sure if that's where the Sabres want to go, if they want to go in that direction, but if they're going to add Chychrun, that's, I would assume, the lineup they'd go for, with Chychrun, of course, being able to eat big minutes. You can still have Owen Power developing as that second pair guy right now, which so far has worked pretty well for them, and giving him that time on ice, not forcing him into a bigger role, but also having Chychrun in that position, which in a lot of ways, if he is healthy, can be one of the best defensive adds they've had in a long time. Definitely one of the best defensive defensemen if they're able to add him onto the defense, but it would make that defense pretty solid, all things considered. You got some great offensive pieces and some great defensive pieces with Chychrun and Samuelsson leading the way. And I think it is pretty important for the Buffalo Sabres, and especially how many guys they have on forward that can dish the puck out, that Chychrun is also a great puck mover when he needs to be, and especially along the blue line, if they're going to play him on the power play somehow, Chychrun can really hold his weight. But that shot and the way he's able to corral it and the way he's able to also feed tips in front of the net is also special. And I think for a lot of that Sabres forward group, they'll come to love Chychrun, not just what he brings on the defensive side, but how well he's able to survey the offensive zone. And I think in Buffalo, he'd be extremely comfortable there. And even if he isn't given those top power play minutes or the top offensive face-off times, I still feel like if he's even just used as a more defensive defenseman, he could work out extremely well. To me, when healthy, he is way better than a $4.6 million contract. And I think for the Sabres, yes, that contract being so good will eat into the value they have to give up. But at the same time, if you're wanting to build a Stanley Cup winner, you need to have the best defense possible, and having a top four, including Dahlin, Chychrun, Power, and Samuelsson, is going to look really good for the next decade. Now, going back to what the Sabres could potentially give up in a Chychrun trade, I've had a lot of difficulty trying to put this together because I think a lot of it surrounds the Sabres' maybe willingness to trade a 2023 first, which I personally, even in the Sabres position where they have such a stacked prospect pool, I'm not sure if I would do, even though they don't need prospects. There's a good chance right now that they could still be in the top 5 of the 2023 draft, and having a top 5 pick in this draft, I mean, to me, there's a very good argument that the top 5 prospects in this draft are all better than Slafkovsky and Wright and Cooley were in last year's draft. It is so extremely stacked, and to me, I think for Buffalo, yes, I feel like you could give up that 2023 first if you needed to, but it also is a situation where Chychrun is still not a need necessarily, so I don't know if they're going to go for that, but I could definitely see the Sabres trading their 2024 first round pick, completely going for it next year, and that's what I think is a lot more likely. But in saying this, this is the potential deal that I think could work for both sides, both for Arizona and Buffalo. Of course, with the Sabres bringing on Jakob Chychrun, I think the Arizona Coyotes, of course, if Chychrun continues to play well, continues to play healthy throughout the rest of this year, and gets, of course, a trade to Buffalo, the Arizona Coyotes would get a 2024 first rounder of the unsigned defenseman Ryan Johnson out of Minnesota, Peyton Krebs, and a 2024 fourth round pick. Now, to me, with Arizona, this checks a lot of boxes. they get a first round pick, even if it might be in 2024. Ryan Johnson, who the Sabres have not signed, is in his senior year with Minnesota, and he's a great puck mover, great skating defenseman, but I have a feeling on that left side is already going to be chock full with Chychrun, and you might have a role there someday as a bottom pair guy, but I also feel like that might be limiting Johnson just a little bit, and I think in Arizona he could get a lot more leeway. And of course you got Peyton Krebs, who hasn't had the year that many people wanted to see, although is still pretty young, and I could see the Sabres not wanting to give up on him. I feel like he might be a forward that Arizona targets, wants to bring on, wants to have as an NHL player already, and then of course you got a 4th round pick on top of this. But I think it's pretty fair value for the Sabres and getting Jakob Chychrun. If he's going to be back at that top 15 D-man level, you get a 1st round pick. You do have to give up a top 4 defensive prospect, but a guy that wouldn't be a top 4 D-man on your own team. A young forward, but also having his own issues, and then another pick on top of things. So I think for both sides, it could work out, and the Coyotes might even need more value, but I feel like at least having that 1st round pick, having Johnson, there's a lot you could work off there, and I think it's a pretty fair trade for both sides, honestly. But it will be definitely interesting to see how the Jakob Chychrun saga ends, but it looks like Buffalo could be the team to finally get a trade done in the end. But let us know in the comments down below, what do you guys think about Jakob Chychrun potentially going to Buffalo? What do you think of mock trade? My mock trade, do you agree? Do you disagree with it? What would your mock trade be for Chychrun going to the Sabres? Do you think it's going to happen? Do you think it's going to happen somewhere else? Let us know down below. And of course, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and share the video with all the hockey fans you guys know online. Click this card for all the Trading Room content right on one playlist, and I will see you in the next one. Have a great day, and goodbye.